you got to realize that whatever you're doing, you're competing with somebody. What is it that gives you an advantage over your competition? Whatever you're good at, try to be great at it. And if you're great at it, good things will happen.
Maverick Podcast.
I'm far from average. That's why I had to come sit down and chop it up with DJ Maverick. They know my name from coast to coast and even in Dallas. I use my talent when I'm faced with a challenge. Gratitude strength is my magnet. Close your eyes and imagine. If you can see it in your mind, then you can have it.
Maverick Podcast.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. This is the Maverick Podcast. I'm your host, DJ Maverick. Today, we have another rock star in the building, the one and only Yadira Porras Montoya. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. This was a long time coming.
Yeah, we've been trying to make it work, right?
Yeah, it's been a busy schedule. I can't complain, though, because it's been all good. It's been all positive.
Very cool. So before we start with everything, for the 1% of the people out there that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Yadira. I was born and raised here in Oklahoma, straight Okie girl. My parents are from Chihuahua. Short, funny backstory. Luis used to be my neighbor.
Yeah.
So that's pretty dope that you've grown, to this. But it's been a crazy journey. I quit my corporate back in 2018. And so I started my business. So I'm a small business owner here in the state of Oklahoma City. And I do a lot of like cultura accessories. I create, things out of like sarapes or just our culture in a small,
For sure.
sense. But, and the reason I did that is a lot of people that don't know who I am, if you've known me for years, you know that I've always either danced ballet folklorico, and I've been I love to share our culture. I think our culture is beautiful, it's vibrant, it's elegant, and I wanted to share that with the world. Yeah,
maybe that's a great starting point, because sometimes I'm like, is our culture in danger sometimes? Because I view some of our traditions, and then oftentimes they get left behind, or they're like, hey, it's too hard to cook this traditional meal or whatever. Those recipes might be forgotten. What do you think about that?
That's one of the reasons why I started Vintage Latina. Vintage Latina was created behind the story that I quit my corporate. I came to the point in my life where I started to know and understand my worth. And I'm like, you know what? I'm making another company, lots of money.
Definitely.
My job, I was doing work for 3 people. And that's when I was like, you know what? This is it. Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I quit my corporate and started this. And I remember going home when I quit my job, and I was crying. I was like, you know what? I don't know what I'm going to do next, God, but I know that you got something for me. And I was raised by, my mom and my abuelos were always living with us. And I grew up watching Cine Blanco y Negro.
Okay.
I grew up watching Cantinflas, Pedro Infante.
The golden age, right? Those are like the best movies, if you ask me, right?
And then I grew up around my mom, my grandma, which are amazing cooks. And when I started my business, the thought was I want to bring those traditions back.
Yeah.
Keep them alive and teach people what our traditions are, like what our culture is really about. And a lot of the things that I do, I carry a lot of products that are for your kitchen, and I still give history on where this came from or how this came about. But I think it's important. My girls, I teach my kids about tradition till this day.
Yeah.
And now my grandkids.
What do you think sort of like drove you to value tradition so much? Was it instilled by like your parents, your grandparents, like you were saying? Or is it just like the love of like, hey, this is who we are. Let's keep this alive.
It was instilled by my abuelo. When I lost my grandpa back in 2013, he was the one that I learned how to sembrar.
Okay.
Because growing up with your grandparents or your parents, like if they're super old school, you can take some of those techniques that you were taught and still embrace them in the modern world and keeping your traditions alive, because it's important. Like some kids don't even know how to poner frijoles a cocer.
Yeah.
It's like if you know how to make, rice and beans, you're set for the rest of your life. Like those are the essentials for us.
Yeah, give me, some beans and a tortilla, maybe some queso fresco. I'm good. Yeah. That's it. Like that's 5-star meal.
Literally. Yeah. And I think it's important for us to keep our traditions alive within our next generations, because there's so much history behind those little, to me, they're essentials.
Yeah.
Those little things that our grandma and grandpa taught us. So my grandfather, my mom's dad, my abuelo Chente, he taught me how to sembrar.
Okay.
And I still do it till this day. I might not have like a big crop.
Sure.
But I will sembrar chiles, tomate, little things like that that are still traditional. And I've taught my kids because one day groceries won't be around and you want to, I'm not saying that they're going to vanish, but I'm saying if you know the essentials of life, that's all you need.
Right. Plus, I mean, everything, like the sort of the push for everything is for organic, right? And go to a farmer's market to source local. Like if you have all that stuff in your backyard, how amazing is that? I'm going to cook this dish. I'm going to go get my ingredients from the backyard. That's amazing.
That is so amazing. And that's one thing that I remember that I will instill in my kids now. One thing that I will always remember from my abuelo is when we used to go to Mexico, to Chihuahua all the time with my grandparents. And they had a granja, which is a ranch, a farm. And my grandpa had a dirt road. So we knew when customers were coming because we would see people drive up the dirt road. And
you probably see the dust coming along, right?
And we knew customers coming.
Yeah.
Because my grandpa had, that's where you would go and get your tomato, your jalapeno, your corn. That's where you would go, to my grandpa's granja. Because he was in the middle of like nowhere. And I remember that's when I started my sales skills back then. And I was like 4 years old.
No way.
And I would get the basket and llegaba la gente and I would help them like pick the tomatoes. Like I would hold and they would put the tomatoes and whatever it is that we're going to buy for my grandpa. And I cherish that skill till this day. I'll never forget because it will teach you essentials of life, customer service, sales. I started sales at a young age.
That's awesome. I always wonder, you always hear about NBA players, like you could see the talent when they were little. You think the same thing goes for entrepreneurs, that you see like, hey, maybe they have a lemonade stand. Like you said, maybe they learned customer skills selling candy at school and stuff like that. What do you think about that?
I think that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
You get it from, either it's in your blood or you grow up around entrepreneurs. Well, back then they were hard workers.
Right.
But you did, because I remember being at Jackson Middle School. My dad, owned a bar, and they used to give him pallets of candy bars.
Okay.
And my dad used to bring them home. And then he's like, toma para que los vendas en la escuela.
Wow.
Well, you didn't have to tell me twice. I grabbed my backpack and I'd fill it up, and I would sell in middle school. I used to sell paletas. I since I was young, I was always selling something.
What do you think drove that? You were just like always a hustler, or did you see how hard your family was working, your abuelos, your parents, and you're like, I need to work hard too?
I think both. I always grew up around entrepreneurs. My grandparents never worked for anyone. My dad never worked for anyone. My dad always owned something.
Okay.
And I used to see the hard work that he put in, because he's like, I don't want to answer to anybody.
Right.
If I want to get up and go one day, I want to have that flexibility.
Yeah.
And I always kept that in my mind. Of course, I did work for different companies, but I've always saw it like, I'm going to be here seasonally, learn what I want to learn, take it with me, and go to my next journey.
That's super important. I always tell people, if you're not either learning or earning at the place you're at, maybe it's time for a change, right? Like once you sort of reach that ceiling, I think a change is good.
And I think that every season for people in certain jobs, it's meant to be.
Yeah.
You're meant to be there because you're meant to maybe help somebody. That's how I see it now. Like any season in my life now, I see it like, all right, your season this year is to be in this area because you need to motivate somebody maybe. Okay. You need to help somebody maybe. And then you just take the skills you learned, give the skills to the people around you, and then move on to the next. I highly believe that.
That's very cool. Yeah, maybe you were meant to be just a friend for that person. Maybe it was even a phase in their life they were going through a hard time, and then just timing and everything, they put you in that spot to guide them through that hard time.
That
maybe,
highly.
right? Yeah, very cool. So if I would have pulled you, to the side as a little girl and said, "Hey, Yadira, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be?" What would have been the answer to that?
We had this conversation a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to be a professional, like a dancer. Like I literally thought that I was gonna, and let me rephrase that. I wanted to be like Jennifer Lopez. If you guys are my age, you know who In Living Color was back in the day.
Yeah.
That's what I thought I was going to be.
Okay.
The little me wanted to be that girl dancing, you know, because I loved that. I felt like ballet folklorico and dancing is where I would leave all of my like mental, like any problems that are going on at home. I feel like as a little girl, because I grew up too fast, I became a guardian too fast of my younger brother, and I feel like I kind of missed out on a lot of
just being a kid.
Yeah,
right.
I did, and so the young me would have said, I want to be.
That's very cool.
I want to be a backup dancer. I want to be a dancer. That's what I wanted to do. I just loved it. The coordination, everything. I loved it.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that, because I have a lot of guy friends that their parents made them go to dance folkloric. They hated it. They're like, hated the dressing up. They hated the songs. And they're like, I don't know why I had to do that. But you're the opposite, right? Like, this was my outlet. I enjoyed it. So it sounds like you maybe even enjoyed the makeup, the dresses, because all that is like super cool with the traditions as well, right?
Well, it's because when you, like, for guys, it's different. Like, when all my cousins had to dance, Raul, my brother even, they freaking hated it. Oh my God.
That's funny. Yeah.
But it was tradition.
Yeah.
It's like, it's either that, because back then, the Hispanic parents, you know, our culture, it's just soccer. But some of our parents are not even into sports.
True.
So it's like our tradition is bailas o trabajas.
Yeah.
You'd get into our traditional dances, or you're working or, you know, doing stuff around the house. But to me, it was fun because I felt like in that moment, I could be anyone I wanted to be. I would do my makeup. I would be in costume and everything. And then I could go, my mind would go and travel to whatever state I was going to represent.
Okay.
That's how I saw it.
Yeah.
So I would escape into that journey, like a mental journey, and I felt like I was in another world.
Yeah. So when did you sort of start your official business? Like, do you remember, like, you quit your day job and you're like, hey, what was the next step after that?
It was 2018, literally right before COVID,
Okay.
a whole year and a half before COVID. I was just, even at my job, I would sell things and little things that I would make or that I would buy and just resell. And finally I was like, you know what? You need to just do this. And I think that anything that you focus on fully will eventually flourish and grow, just like a plant. You put a seed, you water, it's going to grow.
Yeah.
And in 2018 is when I was like, you know what? This is it. I'm miserable at my job. I hated my job. When you pull up to a parking lot of your job and you're in tears, that's a sign.
That's not good.
You're done.
Yeah.
And that's where I was. I was like, you know what? I'm done.
Yeah.
And that I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I just remember praying in my car. I was like, you know what, Lord, whatever it is that you got for me, I know that you're gonna guide me through it. And that's when I started. I literally started by making what do you call it? The Christmas ornaments.
Okay.
Okay, so they're oval and they're clear, and I'm a super crafty person. And so that day that I quit my job, I went home and I'm like, you know what? The only way that I can soothe this anxiety that I felt, I'm just gonna start putting it into art. And I started printing off pictures of Maria Felix, Pedro,
awesome.
Pedro Infante, like Cantinflas, Vicente Fernandez. I printed off pictures, and I remember that I, had all my craft stuff out, and I just started creating. And it was October of 2018, and I was like, Christmas is coming up. You know what? This year, my Christmas theme, I'm gonna do Cine Blanco y Negro.
That's very cool.
Which is
I've
different.
never heard of anybody do that. That's
Right,
really
but in
cool.
my head, I was just like, that's what I grew up around. So I'm like, you know what? I miss my grandpa so much, because he's already passed away. And I miss my old traditions when he was around. And I'm like, I want to bring him back. And I'm going to create a tree that is nothing but vintage, blanco y negro, the cine, the whole scene, everything.
Yeah.
So I printed off a dozen pictures of different actors. Elsa Aguirre, Jorge Negrete, like all back in the day.
That's amazing.
And I made it, and I just sort of put it on Facebook. And then I put, this is my theme for this year, guys. Hope, just give me your feedback.
Yeah.
And I got a text, a DM. Will you make me a set? And then boom, and then ding, ding, ding. I started getting the DMs on Instagram, and I was like,
You're like, this is it. I'm onto something,
yes.
right?
And so that year, that season, within 30 days, I kind of got scared. It's crazy how when we become successful a little bit, we get scared. And we kind of like step back like, no, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do this. This is a lot, and that's how I felt. And long story short, I ended up, within those 30 days, I ended up making almost a little over $1,000 in las feras to sell.
That's very cool.
And then everybody's, can you do Frida? Can you do Jen Rivera? Can you like custom? I'm like, yeah. And so I kind of got the technique down and I started, that's how I started.
Yeah.
Literally from an idea that was meant for just my home. But I shared it with the world and it went from there.
Wow. And I bet it didn't feel like work and probably your mental health was like 180, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. Because people don't realize that when you're creating, your mind, there's a dopamine that gets released. It's almost like when you're craving a soda and you drink the soda and you're like, oh, okay, I'm relaxed. You're good because you got your fix of your soda.
Yeah.
The same thing goes with when you're creating. When you're creating, it's a therapy. It's a sense of therapy because your mind is focused on what you're creating and it unfocuses on your problem. And so when I started doing that, everything was just falling into place. And I'm like, okay, all right, Lord, I'm just going to follow this. I'm just going to go. And then I started adding, I was sewing little bitty coin purses out of an old sarape that I had.
Okay.
And I sewed, I think I made a dozen of them. Sold them like that.
Wow. And prior to this, like you really never experiment like making stuff? Or
no, I mean, for me, yeah.
Yourself?
Yeah, I always had, I would make my own hats. I would make my own, like I would design my own stuff for me, but I would always get compliments on stuff. And then
they're like, where'd you get it? And
yeah.
Like, this is a Yadira exclusive, right? Yeah.
And then I would make it or I would do something, create something cool. And it was always just for my pleasure because I would get lost in my creativity and it would feed me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you started off with the official name Vintage Latina at that point or what?
And that point, that's what I was like, okay, what am I going to name myself? And I'm like, okay, well, I love vintage. I love vintage pinup. I love vintage. I love junkin. I love antique stores. I was raised by my grandparents, my abuelos, and that's when I was like, okay, vintage. And I wrote it down and I'm like, I would say all kinds of names, and then I'm like, what are you, Yadira? I'm like, I'm a Latina. And then I wrote it down. I was like,
it's perfect.
That flows good. And then I asked my husband, I asked my adult kids, like, what do you guys, like, I had like 5 different names, and I remember they're like,
that's the one. Yeah. Now, do you think that if you wouldn't have made that jump, that it would have taken off? Because a lot of people say, if you want to do it, you have to be all in, no backup plan, just go entrepreneur route. And some people say, start, side hustle, evening, stuff like that until you get it off the ground.
I think that, of course, I have a support system. It's different for everybody. I think if, like, you're single, like, of course, make sure that you start as your side hustle. That would be my advice.
Yeah.
But if you have a support system, if you have a spouse that's going to back you up, income-wise, he was my backup.
Okay.
He was my rock. And so when he came home and I told him what happened, he's like, man, screw that job. Like,
that's awesome.
You don't need that. And he's like, do what you want to do. He's like, I'm behind you 100%. And I remember, he's like, you know what? I have $1,000 saved up. He said that are free. He said, take them and go and get what you need and start.
Cool.
And I remember I took my little savings that I had, and then he gave me $1,000, and I invested it in things that I needed. And I started out of my kitchen table.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm doing this.
Yeah. And you just started Facebook, Instagram, just started posting, marketing that way?
Literally, that's how I started. I literally started, hey guys, I got this. And then boom, I did a lot of research. And then I'm like, I want to be different. I want to carry things that are different. And so I started just doing my research. I took a trip to California back in 2019. And I flew into Rosarito, Mexico. And then met a really good family, and then I got some merchandise, authentic Mexican merchandise in Rosarito, and then it went from there. That's where I invested my first chunk.
Got it.
Came back within a week, I tripled it.
Nice.
Like that, and I was doing pop-ups before pop-ups were a thing.
Okay. They just weren't called pop-ups.
No, they were not called pop-ups.
Yeah.
I would literally go to car shows because that's where I started.
Okay.
I'd go to car shows and I would be the only vendor out there besides a tire shop.
Maybe even the only woman, right? Because car shows, there's a lot of guys.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, you would have your like taquera or somebody who's going to do food, but food's been around forever, right? But a vendor, I've been doing vending before they were pop-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And that, and I'm proud of that. And one thing that I do remember is like, I would look around and I would be like, man, like, this is crazy. I'm the only one out here. And Ghost, like every car show. But I started carrying things that I know car enthusiasts would like the sarape.
Okay.
I started carrying colors that were unique. I started bringing colors in that matched their cars. And then that was another stepping stone for me where I kind of lifted to the next level.
Yeah.
In the sales industry.
That's very cool. Did you ever, I think I seem to remember you experimented with food and maybe even like teaching how to cook. And like you're into food a lot too, right?
So I think cooking is how you reach people. Like that's how I show love with cooking. Okay. And one of the things that I got that from my mom and my abuela.
Yeah,
they cook.
Tamales.
Oh my God.
Shout out to
Miss Doña Leti and Doña Socorro. And so I've always known, like, to me, it's like, you want to have a good time? I'm going to cook some food and let's sit, break bread, and enjoy a meal. That's, to me, that's how the best way to get to know people or to enjoy a moment. And I wanted to keep tradition alive, and I would teach or show ingredients on certain recipes that are not talked about anymore. And then I still do that to this day. Like, I have my business, but some of the time, this goes with my business. It started growing so much that I got tired of carrying totes around in the back of my truck. And I told my husband, you know what? This was 2020. I said, you know what? I need a trailer, babe. And then he's like, well, I got some money put up. Use it. And I said, no, I don't want to dig into that. I need to figure out a way how I can make money myself. And he's like, there you go. But to me, it's a challenge. Yeah. I'm challenging myself to get to that next level. And I remember when I had taken my trip to Rosarito, that was in 2019. We went, and I remember in Tijuana, I had my first taste of birria tacos. Okay. Before it even hit Oklahoma. Yeah. And I remember I sat there and I watched her cook, and I watched her and I smelled, the food, and I asked questions, and coming back from that, I asked my grandma, like, Grandma, ¿cómo se hace la birria? And she's, she gave me her way. Okay. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to use that and this, put it together. And I told my husband, hey, I'm going to have a taco cell. And he's like, oh, my God, here you go with your crazy ideas. And then he's like, all right, were you prepared? And I'm like, no, but I'll figure it out. I was like, my goal, the trailer I'm looking at cost, $3,700. I saw it on Facebook Market. That's my goal. Okay. And then he's like, are you sure? And I go, yes. I called my girls up. I have a handset of really good friends. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, girls, this is what I'm going to do. Are you guys down to help? Heck yeah, we're there. And we called it, I was like, we have to call it something. It has to be fun. Yeah. And we got to make it an experience. And they're like, all right. So my biggest supporter when we created this event was my girl Patty from Carnala's Cosmetics. Okay. And we sat, pen and paper. She's like, all right, girl, I could do this, I could do that. And we started planning. And I was like, we need to have music. So we hired a DJ. He came in. And it was a friend of ours that just got here from California, and he's like, I'll DJ for y'all. Mm-hmm. Cool. And he had that whole West Coast vibe. Got it. So I'm like, okay, I want it to be different. Mm-hmm. So anyway, long story short, we called it the Backyard Boogie.
Where did you have it?
At my house.
In your backyard?
In my backyard.
No way.
Yes. Okay. And I have footage for it, and I'll share it with you. Mm-hmm. We called it the Backyard Boogie, and we had like ice chest full of sodas that we were going to sell with the meal. And so we had like a whole line going. I was cooking with the 2 skillets. And then I had a prima prepping, and I had another one doing the salsa, the other one taking the orders, another one taking payment.
But it's not your first rodeo. You're
because
like,
of my
this
mom.
This is what we got to do, guys, right? Yeah.
And we kind of just threw it together, but it flowed. It's like when you have the right friends that support you and you got the right tribe, things will just... Did we know what we were doing? Heck no, because... Just like that, the line ended at the end of my driveway. And I got a pretty long driveway. And the next thing you know, I remember I was cooking and I was just sweating and cooking and sweating. And I was just like, it was a lot. And then all of a sudden we see a limo pull up. And that blew me away. That's when I was just like, Yadira, you did it.
Who was in the limo?
We don't know.
Really?
He had a guy and got off and he sent to go. And he's like, I saw this on social media. We got like... over 18K shares on that post of the birria tacos.
Yeah.
People, I think I was on everybody's Snap that night. And it blew up from there. And there were so many people. And the drinks that we were going to end up selling, I told my husband, you know what? Just give them away.
Okay.
He's like, are you sure? I said, just give them away. I said, while they're waiting, just start giving them the sodas and drinks. Next thing you know, people were pulling up with their ice chest, and it became a party.
Okay.
And it was just like a chill they were getting. And some people were skeptical because they've never tasted my food. And I remember a handful of people was like, oh, just let me get one taco. Let me get 2 tacos.
Yeah.
And they ended up coming back, getting in line. Let me get 30. Let me get 15. Let me get 20. And I would just be like, oh, my God, I was not ready for that.
Yeah.
And so, but still, the tradition, the music, the people, the cooking... And I was stressed. I was screaming inside, but I was in my element.
Yeah.
And that's what made it so much fun.
But it's super important, like you said, to create an experience, right? So you were in the details. We have to have music. We have to have, the food. We have to have a certain name. We have to have all these things in order for it to be successful, right?
Yeah. And people still talk about it till this day.
Yeah.
We were on OETA a year later because we got so much good feedback. We got so much good feedback that 2 years later, we skipped 1 year, and then the year later, we ended up doing it again, and we ended up on OETA.
Wow.
For the Backyard Boogie, which wasn't as big because we didn't advertise it as much as I should have. But it was a beautiful experience. It was like the genuine us just having a taco, just kick back, laid with good music. To me, a good time is good food, good friends, and good music.
Absolutely.
It sets the vibe.
What sort of drives that? Like most people would be like, I don't know if this is going to work. I'm afraid to invest this money.
Yeah. Whatever thoughts consume you is what you're going to attract.
Okay.
And I've learned that we have to do things scared. Because if you don't do it, you're going to miss that blessing. And if you do it, you're going to learn a lesson. That's the way I see it now.
Yeah.
Have I stopped myself from doing certain things in the past? I have, but I've learned it more and more now. When you lose someone close to you, you learn that time is valuable. And you either do it or you stay left behind.
Yeah. Or you have regrets, right? And you're like, I wish I would have done this, right? And then it's like too late. Time passes on.
Yes.
Right?
And that's why I tell everybody, my advice to anyone that's a small business owner, do it. Do it scared. Do it. Just find your right tribe that supports you and find the people that are behind you on because sometimes family is not going to support you. Yeah. It's going to be the strangers that support you. So I'm grateful to have my husband because he's my number. He always tells me, you have the craziest ideas, but they always. But he's like, I'm down. Whatever you need. Yes. I believe in you. That's very cool. And to end that story of the Backyard Boogie, I raised a little over $4,000 that night. $4,000. Yeah. And that night I remember telling the girls, like, let me pay you guys. She goes, no. All of them, they're like, no. You did it. We know why you did it. Just feed us tacos. Your freaking birria's bomb. Just feed us. And we finished at 2 a.m. Yeah. And I remember just sitting there and looking at the aftermath, and I was just like, I'm blown away how it was dope. Yeah. Because you got that home feeling. When you would come and eat, I put tables, chairs, we had candles, we had all kinds of. So it's like you're invited to the carne asada. Yes. Come to the cookout, right? That's what it was. Yeah. That's what it was. And It was beautiful. I'm like, and everybody all the time tells me, when are you going to have another one? When are you going to have another backyard boogie?
Yeah.
And I'm like, soon. My backyard's under construction right now because we're building an outdoor kitchen right now.
Okay, very cool. So I have to ask you about your hat. And I think sort of the customizing of hats is kind of something that you've gotten into recently, right?
Yeah, I've always worn hats. I've worn hats forever. One of my people growing up that I used to be like, damn, she's just a bad female, like, what is Maria Felix?
Okay.
And I have her tattooed on me as a reminder, like, women, we're strong.
Yeah.
And she's the one that I would see and like, man, I love her. The culture of the hats and everything. I've always worn them because of my grandmother, my dad's mother. She always wore hats, and she told me that the reason she wears hats is because you have to be prepared for life. It's a sign of you mean authority. You mean business.
Okay.
That was her way of telling us the reason why she wore hats. And this was me 6 years old. She was telling us, because I'm like, Abuela, why do you always wear, a hat? She's like, porque la vida está llena de oportunidades y tienes que estar lista.
Okay.
And I just started collecting since I was younger, just wore them now that I'm older. And I just started putting my flavor to it. Start adding things and little things here and there. And now my collection, I have a little over 25 hats.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then I saw that you did sort of a pop-up where you're like customizing hats at the event for people, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So I think in our business, we grow. The more you invest in yourself, you start understanding who you are and what your target market is. You start understanding who your audience is. And I would get so many compliments on my hats. And I'm like, you know what? I'm already selling hats. Why not add personalization to a hat that a customer wants? And I did one, and I sold it so fast, and I'm like, okay. And I think too that when you do things with good intention, se te abren las puertas. That's the way I see it. And when I did clients, they loved it, and then I did another one, and I'm just like, dang, I'm not having a problem selling these.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to start. So I started adding jewelry and all that, and I just did a hat bar. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to start doing hat bars. And I've done a couple, and they're successful. It's fun. It's different. You put your own personal touch to each hat, and it tells a story. Everything that I have on my hat tells a story.
Okay.
And I think that's important. When you become my customer, you become my friend. Because once I create a hat for you, especially a high-end, comfortable hat, and you get to tell me your story and I get to create it in a hat, there's a connection there.
Got it. So the first step, I come to you. I'm like, hey, yeah, I want a hat. You start sort of like building a connection, asking me what I'm into, that sort of stuff, or
yes.
what? Yeah.
I always, when you come, like, okay, so what's your style? Do you like modern? Do you like cowboy? Because I carry different styles, and then I go from there. And then what colors do you like?
Okay.
So where do you think you're going to wear this? You're going to be adventurous and travel, or is this just like a night hat you're going to wear out in the city, and boom, we'll go from there. And then I'll do my own research. If I know who the person is and I follow you on social media, I'm going to look at your social media to kind of see, oh, okay, they're into arte. They're into lowriders. They're into tradition. They're into family.
That's a super big hack that most people don't pay attention.
Yeah.
Like, even if you're going to have a big business meeting or something, look up that person. Maybe they're into golf. Maybe they're into basketball. You show up to the meeting and you're like, hey, did you catch the game yesterday? You start to build that relationship, right?
Yeah. You have to know those things. To me, it's like in any business, I love to interact with the people. I think that's so important, because if it wasn't for the people, your business wouldn't be the business.
Yeah.
And I think especially if you're catering to your gente, you have to make sure that you're up to date on trend, on fashion, on things like that, because it switches up so fast. So you got to be ready for that change, and be able to embrace any culture that comes to you. Because I'm diverse. I cater to every race, and I've done from a sentimental hat to a sport hat.
Okay.
I just did the OU Sooners cowboy hat for a client for the World Series.
Okay.
And I've done one for a sentimental one that this customer was out of Houston. She actually requested my services out of Houston, and we did a video chat. And we incorporated her kids, her grandma, her deceased sister, her people that passed away. We added them all, and she just gave me details, and I turned it into the hat.
That's
and
cool.
It blew her away when she received it a week ago.
Very cool. Tell me about this accelerator, because I think you're in an accelerator. Tell me sort of the benefits. What is it about? Because I don't know much about it. Tell me about that.
So shout out to the Stitch crew, to Erica, Chris, Gabby, and I think now they have a new member. But shout out to the Stitch crew, Latino cohort. My girl Patty did it first, and Angela. They did it first, and they're like, "You got to do it, amiga. You got to do it. This is an opportunity." And as Latinos, we don't realize how much help is out there for minorities.
Yeah.
We just don't. We don't look for it. We don't find it. But having good friends that are involved in all that, and so they're like, do it. And I did it scared. I did the video, and I was so nervous. I did it at 11:30 p.m. after when I shot my video? The night that we did the paint and...
Oh, no way.
That day that you were DJing for the event?
Yeah.
That day, right after you left, I literally recorded my video that I had to submit at
Almost
midnight.
like right before. I was going to say the deadline's like right there.
I
right?
was tired. I had just did a whole gig on my feet for 8 hours, and I had came from another event. But when your ambition is there, you do it tired, scared, all of that. And that's what I did. And I was like, you know what, Lord, I'm just leave it in your hands. If this is what is meant for me, it's going to be. And I got accepted. Out of 100 businesses, I was chosen one of the 11 businesses to receive a $15,000 grant towards your small business. But it wasn't even about the money. It was the connections, the networking, what they taught us. And I think that that's what's helped my business grow even more.
Got it.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the network is just as important as the funding that you receive, right?
Yeah, because we still have the connections with them. We're still in a chat where we still participate in events in the city.
Okay.
They always think of us when the new cohorts come out. We get invited to those events and networking events, and then we click with them, and then your networking grows and grows. And I think that's the most important thing. Being a small business is you're open to connect with new people. As a business owner, you got to be open-minded.
Yeah. I wish we did more of that. Something that I don't see in our culture is like, why reinvent the wheel? If you're an entrepreneur, network with other entrepreneurs. Maybe they already figured out the stuff that you're struggling with. Ask them, network. And they're like, hey, well, I had that problem. The way I solved it was this. But instead, you see people that don't collab, and they're like beating their head against the wall, trying to figure out something that the other person probably already figured out.
And I think it's because a lot of our gente, which is sad to say, and I'm going to be bluntly honest about it because I talk about this all the time, that the way that we're taught is competition over collaboration. Why? Yeah. I don't know. And people don't understand that your talent is your talent. You can give 4 people the same recipe,
right,
and it will not taste the same. El que tiene. If it's meant for you, it's meant for you. I hate the part where people are like, oh, she's copying me. Oh, he's doing the same thing. Anyone can do what you start. It's what energy you put into the business.
1,000%.
That's gonna activate, and it's gonna flourish. The action that you're showing is gonna speak louder than anything. So to me, I'm like, that's the problem, is that we see it as a competition instead of collaboration. I've collaborated with plenty of people, and I think that's why we grow so much. Like when we did the taco sale, I collaborated with all my friends, and they came through. We had one selling aguas frescas. We had one selling raspas. I had like a whole vending thing back there.
That's awesome.
To me, it's like, si hay sol, sale pa todos.
Yeah.
Straight up.
So do you think that that's changing, like maybe with our generation and younger generations, or do you still see that that's like a challenge and we need to change that somehow?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I've seen it both. I mean, now I think it's more easy. It's social media, so it can be rewarding, but it can also be evil at the same time, because people perceive things in the sense of where you're at mentally is how you're going to perceive a situation. And so I think that has a lot to do with what what you think of doing. If you have a business and this person's doing something and they do something similar, you automatically assume they're copying off of you. Don't worry about that. Just worry about you, worry about your focus, and you grow it, because you being authentic is going to come from you putting your work into, your work. Like, I think that people need to just stop worrying about somebody else. Just worry about you. Water your grass. Don't worry about their grass, and your grass will grow.
Yeah. I noticed that you brought a book. Tell me about that book.
I actually brought it because I was like, just in case I gotta wait.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna read,
I didn't
because
know
I'm
if,
a nerd. Now I feel like now that I'm a abuela, I don't like to waste time. I've said it before. Like, when you lose close people, you understand that time is so precious and you can't get it back.
Yeah.
So I always have a book bag with me, and I brought it with me just because I'm like, just in case I wait, I'm gonna just start this book or whatever.
That's a big hack, right? Like, are you into like self-improvement stuff, or what do you read?
Anything that I just picked this one up today, but it's The Art of Living, Giving, and Leadership.
Okay.
I'm a big nerd. I love to teach. I love to. I'm not a gatekeeper. I like to give. Anyone calls me and says, "Hey, do you know where I can do this? Is that?" Yep. Go here. Go there. Like. To me, a lot of people, do get upset. Like, why are you telling them where you get this, where that? It doesn't matter. You got to have the money and you got to have the talent to do whatever it is that I do.
Yeah.
And if you got the time, talent, and the ambition can't be bought. Ambition is just in you. Motivation, something you got to create. It's not something you can just go buy off a shelf. That's why I don't gatekeep. To me, it's like, you want gems, I'll give you gems.
Yeah.
I don't keep that stuff.
That's a great segue, because I was going to ask you, how do you balance everything, being with your family, being an entrepreneur, but it sounds like one of the hacks might be is just squeeze every little second of the day. And if, like you said, if you're waiting or something, read a book, do what you need to do, right? Like, maybe what are some of the other hacks that you do to balance everything?
My one hack that I've added to my schedule now, I met, through the Latino cohort. God, they're so amazing. I will never stop talking about the opportunities they gave us. But we were in an entrepreneur Zoom coaching meeting, and one of the guys that was the mentor that spoke that day, his name is Dwayne. Sorry, he is the creator of a brand called Sky Eagle Collection.
Okay,
he's a native that is from Oklahoma. And he created modern native wear. I'm talking about just dope leather. Just all his stuff is amazing. And he was giving us gems that day. And I remember he said, I don't like when people say, I don't have time. Yeah. Everybody has time.
True.
You just have to learn how to manage your time.
It's about priorities.
Yes.
Right.
And that's what I redid my whole schedule. And so one of the things that I love that he did is that he picks one day out of the week and he disconnects from the world, and he connects with his family. And I'm like, that's what I was lacking, because I thought this is work.
Yeah.
And so now what I do is, like, my Mondays I dedicate to reset my home. My Mondays is the day that I clean my home, that I do my appointments, that I do everything. And then just managing my schedule. That's one of the things I will say. Do not say you don't have time. You have time. Yeah. We make time for the things that we have. Of course, lives and things happen that we can't control. But the majority of things, you want to be successful, manage your time. Make sure you have an agenda, a planner, that you have alarms. Alarms are super important with life. Because I'm a caregiver to my grandkids. Their mom passed away 2 years ago. So my son working, going to school, I'm the one that cares of them.
I see.
And being Latina, us Latinos, we don't believe in daycares, and I don't feel comfortable, having them getting taken care of. So it's like, now I got to manage my time to the T.
And you wouldn't have been able to do that if you didn't dive into entrepreneurship, right? So that's another important lesson. Being an entrepreneur, you control your time, right?
Yeah, most definitely. It's important because, and the other thing too, it's like our parents are getting older, and we tend to, because we shelter our kids and we have our family too. It's like we got to make time for our parents too, because they're getting older, and we have to prioritize those little coffee dates or the little cafecito with the tamales with our parents, because those moments, man, we'll never get back.
Yeah.
And it's super important.
What about Sad Girl? Tell me about the connection with Sad Girl.
Man, that was back in 2019. I was strolling through Google one time, or through YouTube. This is right after I quit. And I God is my best friend, okay? He became my best friend in 2005 and even stronger in 2019. And I was like, you know what, Lord? Let me come across something that's going to just fuel me. And I remember I came across a thing called Living Firme. And I saw these two ladies, and they were talking in the video, and I connected. And I remember watching the videos, and my daughter tells me till this day, I was watching the video, and it was so motivating, and I loved it. And I was like, I'm going to be on their show one day. I love what they're doing. They were just all about the community, all about entrepreneurship. And I was like, I'm going to be on that show one day. And I remember saying that in front of my daughters. And then 4 months later, I was just like, I'm going to just shoot my shot. And I emailed them. And I'm like, I want to be in your coaching course. And sure enough, within a week or two, I got signed up, did my fees and all that. And then they started coaching me. Okay. Back in 2019. And the reason I looked into it is because I follow Russell Simmons. He's one of my favorites. And Rev Run. Okay. And I'm like, if they're up here, and they have life coaches, we need life coaches. And as a small business, I need someone to guide me. And that's why I kind of like plunged in and invested my money into coaching. And I clicked with Angel, and they started coaching me, her and Sparkles, and I've learned so much from them. I feel like where I'm at now has a lot to do with what they taught me. Okay. Their coaching course is not intense, it's super laid back, but it's very informative. Like, they give you a lot of information. They make you sign a contract that you are basically holding yourself liable that you're going to learn. Okay. Your goal is that you're going to, implement what they're teaching you to your business.
Maybe boil it down, like, what are some of the benefits of having that life coach?
Having the benefits of a life coach is they teach you how to embrace change. They teach you how to prepare yourself that it's okay to have change. Hold yourself accountable. They teach you about constructive criticism, because at the beginning, I was offended at it when when people tell you what you don't want to hear, you get offended. But then you start understanding, when you mature, you start understanding that constructive criticism is a must. Okay. Otherwise, you're not going to
improve.
You cannot. Yeah. We learn every season's a lesson, and every mistake that we go through, it is teaching us something. So there's so many benefits behind having a life coach, a business coach. They teach you new trends that you don't know about. And then they're on the West Coast. Okay. So they get trends that Oklahoma gets 3 years later, And they've held me accountable for a lot of things. And one thing I'm grateful for, too, is they teach this cool... there's a season where they teach a thing called Wheel of Feria. And it's basically a wheel, like a pie, and it's broken down so you can have a visual of what your income is, how to make money. And they teach you how, you want to make $50,000, so you got to sell 50 sarapes at this price for this amount of time. Like, they break everything down. Okay. So you can see. Their goal for us was to become millionaires. So for you to make $1 million, I had to sell this item this many times a day, this many times a week, a month, and they break it down like that. That's something they taught me that I will always cherish. I'm not a millionaire yet, but we're getting there. Yeah,
but you got the steps, right? Because you hear $1 million, and that could be intimidating. But like you said, if you break it down into steps, it's more digestible. Yeah. There's a plan, right?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. And I think a lot of us are not successful because we don't see. You have to see your business plan in paper. You can't just have it up here. You have the breakdown of it, just like a recipe.
Yeah.
You can't make that dope recipe if you don't have all your ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
And our life is the same way. You got to do inventory of your life. What's not good anymore, remove it.
Yeah. So what's the goal for Vintage Latina? Where do you want to take it?
My goal is to have a storefront.
Yeah?
Yes, because
Okay.
I've been traveling. I do travel state to state and all that. And so my goal is to have a storefront. My goal is that when you walk into my storefront, you smell leather, you hear Santa Cecilia, you hear San Pedro Infante. I have a vision of you walking in and there's a lot of wood. There's hats everywhere. It's just a vibe. Yeah, I have the vision of it. I'm like, I know it's gonna come true. I just have to. I'm in my preparing stage, but that's where I want to be. I want to have my own storefront here in Oklahoma.
Cool. And you think that that's sort of like going to be your mission, is just to grow Vintage Latina? Like that's what you want to do, or do you think you want to explore maybe other options as well?
I want to grow. I want to grow Vintage Latina. I'm exploring a little bit more too on the hats. I've just added, and I haven't even announced it, so you know
Exclusive.
it first, exclusive.
Yeah.
But I've added trucker hats to my line because my husband's a trucker. He's been a trucker since 2014. I wear trucker hats, but now customizing the trucker hats is what I'm already did. I did my first one for bank first. I did a corporate event, and the cool thing about Vintage Latina is that I come to you.
Okay.
I'm mobile. Like I come to you. Want to have a hat party? So guys, girls, the guys, I have cigars, things that they can put like I don't know if it's this side or this side. I have a bullet.
Oh yeah, I
This
see
side?
it. Yeah, I see it.
So I have things for men. So I cater to men and to women. And so my goal is basically coming to you. You have a girls' night, couples' night. I come to you, bring everything, and you create. Like I help you bring out that creativity.
That's cool. I also see that you kind of distress like some of the hats and stuff.
That vintage,
too, right?
I like it to look like weathered. I like
some
it
character, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I always geek out about is music. You know that, right? So I always ask my guests, if I pull up your playlist, who am I going to find on your playlist?
You're gonna find a lot of Santa Cecilia. You're gonna find I don't know if you've heard of them, the Discany Brothers. It's like soul,
Okay.
but it's like country mixed with soul. I listen like my main one is I love old school Mexican music, like trios, panchos.
Okay.
Los trios pancho, like old. I got an old soul, but that's what I listen to, like that or Santa Cecilia. Have you heard of Santa Cecilia?
Yeah.
Oh, I love her stuff.
Do you think sort of like older music is driven by like growing up around your grandparents and stuff like that? Yeah.
To me, it's like I always tell people, if you lost somebody and you want to have them near, like spiritual wise, listen to what they used to listen to.
Okay.
Or something, that music that'll bring them back, because in spirit they're there with you.
Yeah.
And my grandpa always listened to Vicente Fernandez. He would listen to Pedro Negrete, like different artists Jorge Negrete, sorry. And that's what I have on my playlist, is like a lot of Santa Cecilia. I do like Eddie Zuko.
Okay.
I love Eddie Zuko. The Altons, the Sinceres.
Okay.
Oldies, like modern oldies. That's what my playlist consists of.
That's awesome. So for the viewers out there, maybe they're intimidated to take that jump, right? You did it. What's some of the advice that you would give them to, like, hey, don't be scared? You know, I don't know. What are some of the lessons learned, I guess?
Man, put your ideas on paper.
Yeah.
Put your ideas on paper and ask God. People don't realize, man, this is one thing I will say. I think my business is more successful now that I've welcomed God into my business, that He's put me where I need to be. And my advice to you would be, put it on a paper, because if there's something magical that happens, that when He gives us a creation and we put it in a thought, the thought goes into a paper, it manifests. It will happen.
Yeah.
So my advice would be writing it down. It doesn't matter if you're scared. If it doesn't scare you, then you should be worried. It should scare you.
Because you're not thinking big enough, right? You're not dreaming.
Heck yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like I can envision that my place is where you're going to be on a Friday night. It's not about clubbing and all that. No, come create a hat on a Friday night and be in the vibe and walk into some Santa Cecilia, have you, a drink while you create your
It'd be a
hat.
cool date night, right?
Yes,
Like just go hang out and stuff like that.
Yes, and I've
I
done
can
it.
already see it.
So much fun. And you go in, and I envision my spot with big windows. I don't know where I'm going to be located. All I know is I have big windows in my storefront.
Yeah. Food too, or no?
Yes,
Yeah?
I'm gonna definitely have a food
Okay.
night where we have a little bit of both. We got food, and I don't think the cooking will ever go away in
Yeah.
my business. No, I don't sell food out of my business, but it's a part of my culture.
Yeah.
You know, it's like food, good time. It just all goes together.
Do you ever struggle with burnout? You know, I struggle with like if I'm not doing anything, I feel guilty, and I don't know if that's trauma from like seeing my family work so hard that I just want to make them proud, and I feel like I have to be working hard 24/7. I don't know if you struggle with that. Like
Oh, yeah.
not being able to just unplug.
2 years ago, 2021, I went through burnout, and I got depressed.
Yeah.
And I ended up in the hospital. I definitely got burned out. And what did I do? I secluded myself away from the world, and I got into clarity, and I got myself healthy, because we don't understand that if we're not healthy, we can't produce a good connection.
Right.
We can't.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that back then. And so I became healthy when I got my burnout, and I reset. If you stay away from social media for a while to clean yourself up from burnout, the world's not going to stop. Because to me, it's important for you to have a good version of me before money. Money is nothing if you're not healthy.
Yeah, I mean, the same people, the loved ones that we want to provide for and we care so much, if we don't have our health, we can't do that regardless,
Yeah.
right? No matter how hard you're hustling.
And you have to understand burnout comes with you not creating boundaries.
Yeah.
If you don't create boundaries, you will be burned out over and over and over, because we don't know how to say no. Or we don't know how, even our families, we have family that need us, but they have to understand that we come first.
Yeah.
We have to rewire our brain, because in the Latino culture, our mom and dad come first. It don't matter what we're doing, drop what you're doing, because you got to go help your mom and dad. Yes, of course, if it's an emergency. But when you're a provider now, it's about you first. Am I mentally okay? Because we give, but who's giving us when we need it?
Yeah.
Who's fueling us? Who's filling our cup when it's empty?
Super important.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? Go ahead, plug in your social media, maybe any projects if you have anything coming up.
So social media, every single platform, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, I'm under Vintage Latina. Projects that I'm coming up, I'm working on, we are just waiting for the approval on the location, but I'm going to host a hat bar workshop.
Awesome.
So we're just waiting for the okay on. So just follow me on social media to stay connected, because it's a limited space.
Yeah.
I'm only going to open up so many tickets. Once the tickets are sold, you're going to have to wait till the next one. But it's going to be fun, because there's going to be food, there's going to be hat making, there's going to be music, all of that. It's going to be a whole vibe.
Yeah, that's very cool. I want to thank you for your time. You know, we had to
you.
do it early and stuff like that. And while I have you here, I want to give you your flowers and say, you know, don't take it for granted what you're doing. People notice your hard work and the dedication and just the amount of love that you pour into your projects. I definitely notice it. So if I notice it, I know others do too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And one thing I do want to highlight, man, if you are a business owner, make sure you take care of your mental health. I'm a big advocate now for 2 years, going on 3, about mental health, because it's the people that smile the biggest, that joke the most, that are hurting the worst.
Yeah.
And we don't realize it until we lose someone close. And I think that's made me take my business to a more serious level. Because before I had a business to make the money, but now I'm doing my business to leave a legacy.
Okay.
And so my legacy is, it's not just about the money, it's about family. It's about spending the time with the right people and highlighting those things that do matter. It's okay to not be okay. Because as business owners, we think that the Instagram image is what we're supposed to be 24/7.
Right.
No, that's not what it is.
Yeah.
It's just being you 24/7 and taking care of your mental health.
And in our culture, we don't talk about that.
Nope.
Right. I don't know how we change that, but we definitely, hey, you know, be strong is everything we hear. Like if you say I'm having a bad day or whatever, it's like ponte las pilas.
Yes.
Right.
Or estás loco, ponte a limpiar,
Yeah.
ponte a lavar los trastes, and I emphasize that a lot. I did an interview with Telemundo a year ago, and I highlighted that, because postpartum depression is so real, and when it hits home, when it hits in your own house, your life will be turned 360 just like that in a snap of a finger in an incident that you lose someone over something that was overseen because we're too busy.
Yeah.
And we're not understanding that we're not triggering what needs to be addressed. And why? Because we live in a fast-paced world. We gotta do this for that person and that for that person, but we never stop to think about us first.
Yeah.
And we were taught that that's being selfish. Heck no, it's not being selfish. Rewire your mind. Know that you come first. You gotta love yourself before you can love somebody else. And mental health is real. It's not que estás aburrido. It's just that growing up, and I don't know if this was in your home too, but like in my home, my parents were too busy providing that we never got that, mijo, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
Or that embrace of being a good person. And I think that a lot of us carry that childhood trauma that we don't heal from.
Yeah, and themselves, they probably felt guilty, like they can't even take a sick day or they can't take off because they have to provide for their family, right? So they probably don't check on themselves, right? They're like, I have to do what I have to do.
Yeah, and then and now that I'm older, I know that how did I expect that affection, that love for my mom if she wasn't even taught that?
Yeah.
My grandparents didn't teach her because all they knew was work. And
Definitely.
my parents work. So it's like, it's a generational, literally to me, it's a generational curse that gets passed down. And you have to kind of tell yourself, you know what, it stops at me. And I'm super hands-on with my kids. I'm involved with my kids. I'm not a perfect mom, but I'm all up in your business.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a minor, I'm all up in your business because we live in an evil world, man.
Yeah.
And it's
tough.
important. We gotta be al tiro, como dicen. Like,
Yeah.
we have to be alert with everything: house, our businesses, our kids, our surroundings.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you. I definitely enjoyed the
Thank you.
conversation. You're always welcome if you have any projects or whatever. Maybe when you get your storefront, you can come back, or if you just want to come back, talk about music. My grandma always listens to Javier Solis and
Yes.
Paquita del Barrio, so I'm sure we could vibe out on playlists alone.
For real,
right?
man. Paquita throws some truths out there. That's my mama's music.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thank
All
you so
right.
much. I appreciate you.
Definitely. All right, there you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, the super talented Yadira Porras Montoya on the Maverick Podcast. Keep grinding because in dreams we trust.
That's right.